When one's marriage needs to be enriched, empowered, or uplifted, we must carefully consider the voices we let into our lives. Ones that share practical wisdom, biblical truth, and uplifting advice to keep the marital fire burning should take priority in order to build strong relationships and lasting memories. If you've been waiting for this key voice for your relationship, look no further. With a fresh perspective and principle-provoking view on marriage, this is TwoGether.
This is TwoGether, an Ada Bible Church podcast about the world of marriage, where we attempt to invite you to explore the ways that marriage works and doesn't work. From practical ways of learning to biblical inspiration, we invite you to listen to other professionals and couples to help enrich your marriage. Here are your hosts, Samuel Jones and Dr. Kelly Bonewell.
Hey everyone, this is TwoGether, Ada Bible Church podcast about marriage. We're putting this out into the world to just give people some more resources on how to build a stronger, more healthier marriage. And this podcast is hosted by myself, Dr. Kelly Bonewell, and Samuel Jones. We both work at Ada Bible Church, and to get us rolling, Samuel, who are you?
Yeah, who is Samuel Jones? Well, let's just, I'm not that Sam Jones character from The Flash and all that, number one. That's a 1960s, 50s joke. I was born in the 80s, so let's just make that clear. Who am I? I am a young guy. Yeah, I'm definitely significantly younger than Kelly Bonewell.
Let's be nice.
But that's okay. That's okay. His wisdom and his grace comes through every single day, and I'm excited about that. So, yeah, I've been at Kentwood campus just under a year as their men's ministry director, and I have gotten the significant advantage to serve with Kelly here at Ada, and I'm excited about that. I brought with me my wife. I got a chance to have a wife, man. God so blessed me with a wife of 6 years. I remember just like yesterday, the opportunity for me to get on a bus going from the Allendale campus of Grand Valley State University and getting on the bus, 50 line, going downtown to Pew campus. I saw her. She looked beautiful. And I said, wow, I should just talk to her. And I saw she had a bag of groceries in her hands. I think it was a couple bags. To my eyesight, I saw a couple bags. I saw a couple opportunities, right, to just talk to her. And so we were driving down there, or at least riding down there. And when we got to Pew campus, I, got the courage up to go to her and say, hey, can I help you take your bags home? Now, this is the point of dispute between my wife and I. She says to me when we talk about it, honey, I only had one bag. So you coming to me asking me, who I have not met, if you could help me with my bag of groceries, made you look like a creeper. So,
great way to start, Samuel.
Right. Let's just say, Kelly, it took 10 years after that moment to get the courage enough to talk to her.
10 years?
A whole whopping 10 years in which we, saw other people, but we eventually came back to each other. Thank God for that. And we also have a daughter. So that's great. We have a 6-month-old. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and parenting, I'm sure, later. How about you, Kelly? Tell the people.
Yeah. So Julie and I have been married for 26 years.
Wow.
And we had kind of a very different beginning of our relationship. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I'm working with couples, I tell them, do not do what I did. I met Julie on Memorial Day weekend of 1993.
Wow.
That's dating me.
Yep.
And we got engaged in September of that year. And then we were married in April of 1994.
Wow.
So less than 11 months, we had a whirlwind romance, and Julie's a perfect fit for me. She's very different than me. She's a nurse, and really appreciate her. I have, in terms of my family, I have two boys. Josiah is 25 now, and he works with an engineering firm here in, actually it's in Holland. Mm-hmm. And then Micah, my youngest, is 23, and he also is an engineer. And again, they get all of their smarts from their mom, because I have no science or mathematics understanding in the least.
I'm right with you.
So, with that, Samuel, tell
Sure.
everybody, like, what do you like to do?
Oh,
What are you
sure.
into?
So just I'm gonna let this be known. I'm probably the biggest college, high school, National Football League fan that you'll meet. Just from the spot of I got a chance when I was at Grand Valley to play football in my
What position?
Yeah, I played defensive tackle. Just imagine a 6-foot powerhouse coming at you, 300 pounds, of pure muscle. I don't look like that anymore, but it's okay. It's all right. God has still blessed me to be mobile.
And I heard you, somebody told me you won a national
We
championship.
did. Yes, 2005 to 06 national championship. The last national championship team the Lakers had.
Wow.
Which was great year. In that though, I've gotten a chance to pour back into high schoolers coaching at an area school, and we also, like, right now it's amazing because we have one of the top defensive linemen in the state. He's even nationally ranked.
Wow.
So God's given me a chance to pass into these guys what I learned.
Awesome.
And they're taking it even further. So yeah, we love doing that. Me and my wife together collectively, we love walking, spending time together, watching movies. Can't wait for the movie theaters to open back up, of course. And, and love traveling. We've been all around the United States and parts of Central and South America as well. So yeah, that's what we kind of love to do. How about yourself and your wife, Kelly?
Yeah, well, for myself, I really enjoy golfing. I've been golfing for about 25 years, and at the 25th year, I think maybe I kind of figured out some things with the game.
Sure.
I've been playing much better this summer, but I really like golfing, especially like golfing with my sons. Another thing that I do that I've been doing for about that same amount of time is I paint. And so I paint paintings, abstracts and figurative painting, and I'm pretty dedicated to that. So I'll spend about an hour or two every night doing that. And then with Julie, we, like, kind of like you with Tova, we like to travel.
What's one of your most favorite places that you've been?
Oh, by far. Best trip I ever had with Julie was when we went to Rome and Florence.
Oof.
We went with my mom. This was our 24th anniversary, so it was just a couple of years ago. And my mom had never traveled internationally before. In fact, she hadn't really been in a city very much.
Sure.
And we have a really close relationship with her. Sadly, a couple of years ago, my mom passed away. And so that's why I really cherish that trip, seeing Rome and seeing all that history and visiting the Vatican. Highly, highly recommended. However, when you're in Florence,
yes,
be careful of eating some of the food because they have some dietary things that they do that we really don't do in America. And I got food poisoning on the last day.
Well, you know why that is.
Why?
The saying is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So, yeah. Well, we're getting ready to do a podcast, right? This is something that people want to check out and listen to. You're listening to two people in the profession who are not just at a ministry, but also we have counseling experience too, right, Kelly? You've been in counseling for over 20 years, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I've been counseling for 20 years. Had a private practice for about 7,
Sure.
and then I've been here at Ada for 12 years.
Wow.
And how I became a counselor is kind of interesting because when I met Julie, again, this is over 25 years ago, counseling wasn't as prevalent, especially in the church. And I actually talked her out of seeing the counselor because I didn't really value it. And if you would have told me back then that I'd become a counselor, I'd have been like, yeah, you're crazy. That's the last thing I'm going to do. Previous to that, I was working in the business world. Julie and I moved here from Chicago.
Chi-town.
Chi-town.
Yeah.
Huge Chicago sports fan. I am. Bulls, Bears, etc. Cubs. I'm a Cubs fan, not a White Sox fan.
Of course, Northsiders.
Northsiders. Anyway, when we moved to Grand Rapids, I had to make a career change because the job I had in Chicago really wasn't here in Grand Rapids. And I really wrestled with that for a long time about what am I going to do with my life? And I was talking with a friend named Mark. And Mark knew I was trying to make a career transition. And we're having coffee one day. And he says to me, Kelly, I know exactly what you should do. And I said, Mark, what? He says, you should become a talk show host. And for some reason, that really hit me. I'm like, you know what? I should become a talk show host. I'd be a great talk show host.
Hey, you're doing it right now.
I know.
This is pretty good.
I know. I'm going to be the next David Letterman. Not. Anyway, as I prayed about that and thought about that week, actually, God used it to say, you know what? A counselor is a little bit like a talk show host.
Sure.
And at that point in my life, I was doing a lot of mentoring and discipling of guys.
Yeah.
And literally within a week, I signed up at Grand Rapids Theological Seminary, where you went.
Where I went to. Yes.
And thought the program is about 3 years. I thought it was going to take me 10. And I finished in 3. And then right out of seminary, I started my practice, and it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. How about you?
Yeah, it's amazing, Kelly. Just number one, how similar our stories are. Also, I think about how much you've paid this forward, even to me, and are still paying it forward in many ways. For me, in the African American kind of perspective and corridor, counseling has not been as valued. Now it is taking off, years and years later, in communities of focus, in the way that it should have several years ago. And so because of that, it's funny, I would always find myself, 10 and 15 years ago, having tons of conversations with college students, high school students, while being in those arenas, talking about life, talking about mental illness, talking about problems and things that were going on in our communities and even personally, and in those time frames, I didn't recognize that, therapy was a thing that I would do or was doing. It was just a thing that we just talked, right? We just had, barbershop conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think in that, I was in retail management, and, at one point in time, always having these conversations on what we call the sales floor, while people were working on modulars and in end caps and stuff. My pastor at the time, he had said to me, Sam, and this is his voice, Sam, have you ever considered, talking or going into like therapy and doing counseling? And I said, counseling what? I said, I've never seen a counselor myself. I'm like, I don't know if I should or what that is. So I went the route of a master's in education initially. And I brought that back to him, and he said, you didn't say you were going to do that. I said counseling, you said counseling, go get it done. And it's funny that the route I ended up going to was Grand Rapids Theological Seminary.
That's awesome.
So that definitely was the reason I went. Now we're just, working with individuals and supporting them in ways that are deemed fit because God brought me this way. So I'm ecstatic to do this. And so we're both here, both professionals in ministry, professionals in counseling. And in this, the reason that hopefully you're here is because you saw or heard about this thing called a marriage podcast. So Kelly, why are we doing this for real?
Well, why are we doing it? Well, again, as I said earlier, we're really trying to just have more and more resources to the Ada Bible Church community and our community at large on how to build healthy marriages. By far, our number one care need at Ada Bible Church is marriages who are struggling. And especially now during COVID, one of the things that that I've heard kind of consistently is that if you had before all this happened, if you had a healthy marriage, you're loving this time, or especially during the shutdown, that you love the time because you're able to spend so much time with your spouse.
Yeah.
But for those couples who didn't have a good marriage, the divorce rate has spiked. Yeah. And so, that's a big reason now. there are 3 aspects of the podcast that we want to highlight.
Sure.
The first one is we have a really vibrant mentorship ministry for marriages and for just individual issues as well here at Ada. And so one aspect of the podcast is throughout it, you will be able to hear different kind of learning or training modules for those who are marriage mentors at Ada Bible. One of the first ones that we're going to do, probably the next one, will be just how to do a meeting. It sounds pretty simple, but there's some different things that you have to do in a meeting when you're mentoring some people, and we're going to go over those details.
Sure.
Another aspect of the podcast is going to be we're going to connect and interview different counselors locally and hopefully even nationally who can offer our audience some information about different aspects of marriage and how to make them more healthy. And then finally, the thing that I'm probably most excited about, one aspect of the podcast that I'm excited about, is we're going to interview couples and hear their stories. I think when you hear somebody's story, you can learn a lot from it. You can connect.
Yeah.
You can connect, like, oh yeah, I've gone through that, or you can learn from it. So we're going to have just some key questions that we're going to ask all the couples. Some of those questions would be like, hey, when did you meet? How did you meet? Why did you fall in love?
Yeah.
What caught your eye in that other person? What are the strengths and opportunities for improvement for your marriage?
Yeah.
And then finally, like what would be like a key marriage advice that you would give somebody? And again, I'm really excited about this because I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn from other couples.
Yeah. And I do want to add this for our listeners now. This is our little disclaimer. The disclaimer is this is not a substitute for counseling or therapy. But this is definitely an enrichment for you as a couple, for you as a marriage mentor, or whatever reason you're coming here. Maybe you're thinking about getting married. And the goal of this is to really give you some really good information, wisdom, and practical application to make your relationship, your marriage, or thinking about marriage even better. So
excellent point, Samuel.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Kelly, I think it would be nice to kind of give people a little taster, maybe, of what they have to look forward to.
I'm game.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Let's talk about these key principles of a marriage, and I know me and you have talked about 3 of them specifically. Now, if you're not a biblical scholar or a theological expert, this is definitely for you as well. We might say some terms or things that you might be like, I don't know what that means. We're gonna take time to explain them. So that's my little word of encouragement. So, 3 principles of a marriage. Number 1, I think there's this word called agapo. You may have heard it as agape in some circles. And with agapo, really what that means is, especially in the context of marriage, this aspect of being committed, but also providing a sacrificial love to your spouse, right? I think of it as agape as unconditional. In many senses, when you think of God gave his only begotten son for the entire earth, right? John 3:16. And he did it unconditionally, knowing that, hey, no matter how the world treats my son, I'm still going to love the world in spite of all the things that may happen, right? In the same way, that really models for us this aspect of marriage where when 2 are becoming one, there's this place of, what? I want to truly love my spouse without the condition, because there's going to be days that are tough, right? Days that are difficult, days where you're like, you have tough days? Yeah. Yeah, a lot. I can remember like when, my wife, here's another disclaimer. My wife is okay with me sharing some things, because we're going to get personal, Kelly, at times, right?
Without a doubt, we're going to get personal.
There were times when my wife and I, in the first couple of years of our marriage, she would have to take a walk because I was being very annoying For
There
whatever
were a
reason.
couple times Julie had to take a walk.
Yeah. You know, there was one moment in the winter of 2014, and she had, I did something. I must have said something annoying, and I just know she was not in the house anymore. And I went outside and I looked, and the car was still there, and you know, Walmart was down the street or whatever, a store, whatever store it was called, down the street. And I went outside and I looked. I said, "My wife take off on me." You know, and I went and I chased her down and I found her. She was walking back from the store, and I had my church coat on and some church shoes and shorts in the dead of winter.
Oh boy.
Why? Because I love my wife. And you know, in that moment,
That
you know,
is a great picture, Samuel. Church shoes, church jacket, and shorts in the middle of winter.
I loved my wife enough to be like, you know what? Whatever I did, I apologize. And you know what? That love, Kelly, is a capital LOVE.
Absolutely.
Right? That's where, you know what? I had enough grace, and she had enough grace for me to forgive me for whatever I had said. And we knew that we would love each other without condition from that moment. But it takes time to get there.
Totally.
You have to take time to get there. And I think in it, you know, couples sometimes recognize that, you know, in the places where they want to get together, there's this piece where one person is always trying to change the other. Right. And sometimes they feel like they're in the right. But often cases, what it takes is this mutual working together where you're both changing for the better.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
agree.
and I think that that's the key to agapo. Another one that I think about is phileo, right? You might hear phileo and you'd be like, oh yeah, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love.
Yeah.
You got it, right? That's where we're thinking about this friendship in marriage. Kelly, I know you talk about believer, servant, friend, and we'll probably get to that way beyond, way later, but there's this aspect where literally in friendship, you actually like the person that you're with.
Absolutely.
Right? I like my wife. I like when, you know, she looks a certain way. I like how she treats me. I like how, you know, when we have fun together, you know, I would never want to be with someone else because I actually like her. And I think often cases, you know, it's based on sometimes what the other person can do for you. You know, I think there's that aspect of friendship love where it's often self-seeking. But I think in that it's important to realize in your self-seeking behavior, you know, how you learn to operate in unity because you really sincerely want to be that friend to that person that's your spouse. You know, it's the reason that you leave your wife, right? Or excuse me, not you leave your wife, but the reason that you leave your family, right? You leave your family to unite with your wife, as scripture says, because you literally like her enough. You know, I think in that there's a challenge, Kelly. There's a challenge of, in many cases, when marriages aren't working out, it's because they never really liked each other. And so that really begins to be really important, you know, and with when I say that, what I mean is is based on shared interests, right? But also it's based on character, which may be like personality. You know, like we talked about in the beginning, we like spending time with our wives. We like to watch movies. We like to travel. Those are shared interests.
Totally.
And those things are really key to that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Samuel, there's a third love that you have to have, and it's called eros. And eros is sexual love or erotic love. But I always tell couples that I'm working with that eros is in the bedroom and it's outside of the bedroom. But also eros, what I feel about it is it's often the barometer of the marriage. If you, like in terms of my practice, I've worked with a lot of couples over the years, and I don't think, I've thought about this a lot, I don't think I've ever worked with a couple in counseling who had good eros, meaning they were struggling there. In fact, I think there's a lot of Christians who are struggling in the eros area because it's so difficult to talk about, especially if there's a problem in it. Another way to look at eros is it's the mortar of the marriage, if I were to create an analogy, in that when you're building a wall with bricks, you need to use mortar. And that's kind of like the glue that keeps that wall together. And a marriage without eros isn't using mortar. And so you can build a wall with bricks without mortar, but there will be two aspects of that wall that you built. The first aspect is it will be easily toppled. And same with marriages, there will be times when something difficult happens that it could topple the marriage.
Yeah.
The other aspect that is so important, going back to that image of mortar of the marriage, is that if you're building a brick wall and you're not using mortar, you can only build it so high, so tall. And same thing, if you have a great eros in your marriage, it'll be deeper, it'll be more rich. One way to think about eros is it's literally getting back to the garden where you can be naked and unashamed with your spouse.
That's so good.
And so with that, there are 4 aspects that I really want people to think about when it comes to eros, because this is an area I work a lot in my private practice. And the 4 aspects of eros are quantity. How often are we going to be sexual? That's a real challenge, because usually within couples, they have a different idea of how often they want to be sexual. And healthy couples get on the same page with that issue.
Yeah.
The other couple qualities of it, of eros, is quality and creativity.
Creativity, what does that mean?
Yeah. Is your sexual relationship rote or boring or the same way all the time? And so couples need to be creative, and they really need to push into the quality of that relationship. And then the final aspect, which is really important, is emotional connection.
Yeah.
Are you genuinely there and connecting with your spouse? And again, this is an area that often couples struggle, and it can be really helpful to walk with either a mentor couple or a counselor in digging into these areas. So on that aspect, so we've got the 3 loves: agapo, phileo, and eros. One of the things I would challenge you who are listening is, when I'm working with a couple, what I'll do is I'll ask them, hey, agapo. I'll ask the husband, scale of 1 to 10, where are you at? Where do you think you're at? And then I'll ask the wife to give me a separate number. And then same thing, phileo, scale of 1 to 10, how you doing? And then with eros, what I do is I do something a little bit different. And that is I break down those 4 different aspects. So how you guys doing on quantity? Are you on the same page? How are you doing on quality and creativity? Scale of 1 to 10. And then finally, emotional connection. How you doing there? Scale of 1 to 10. And when you do that and you give yourself or tell your spouse honest numbers, that's really where your marriage is at that point in time. And also the cool thing about it is it tells you where you need to work. So often couples have great agapo, but maybe they need to really push into phileo and be more purposeful about it.
Yeah.
The final thing about that, Samuel, that I want to mention is marriage love is a willed action. It just doesn't,
that's so good.
It just doesn't come. You have to will it. You have to be purposeful about it. So on some aspect with these loves, they need to be on the calendar.
Yeah.
So agapo, one way that can be on the calendar is just sitting down and having serious, significant conversations with your spouse. Phileo, going out and doing something fun with laughter and not seriousness, and just enjoying that time with your spouse. And then, yes, even putting eros on the calendar, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later in some further episodes.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
But Samuel, let's wrap things up. This has been a good time, you and I, as a preliminary talk.
Yeah, this has been awesome. So hopefully, listeners, you've enjoyed, this very first podcast from Kelly Bonewell and Samuel Jones, the TwoGether marriage podcast. With that, we want to explain and share to you the way that you can find us both. You can actually find Kelly Bonewell on his website, www.kellybonewell.com. That's KELLYBONEWELL.com. And you can find myself, Samuel Jones, at www.theprincipalthing.com. And that's principal as in PLE, not PAL. So you can find us on that. And for next time, for the TwoGether broadcast, this has been Kelly and Samuel. We'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to TwoGether. We hope that you've learned a thing or two. If you find the podcast helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like more information on Ada Bible Church and its ministries, or someone to pray or dialogue with about your marriage, email us at care@adabible.org.